Imagine again, like you go into the same VC office, and I'm retelling my own experience, but obviously through that frame. And you and Amit sit down and say, "All right, we're going to spend 1 minute sharing about each other's personal lives. Then we're going to share 1 minute talking about our current professional project."
Oh my
Okay, great.
God.
Then we're
Did
going to
you experience
spend,
this?
yes, I did. And listen, I very much believe in facilitation, right? I
Yeah.
very much believe that facilitation, but I've also learned that over facilitation in terms of like, 2 minutes here and there in a group of people, they go and completely destroying a free flowing conversation can be bad. And then what rubbed me the wrong way the most is when it's intentionally extractive, when
Well, toxic.
almost the conversation is designed to find some transactional benefit.
Yep.
So case in point, one of the questions that was asked of everyone saying, "Hey, everyone go around the room and share one person that you're looking to meet," right? If you can get one introduction today. And that's what just had me walking away going, wow, this is actually one of the worst conversations I've been part of.
Mhm.
And again, it's not the people that were there. It wasn't the venue or the space or the bad coffee.
Mhm.
It was purely there was this attempt or assumption that the way to get people to connect or the way to get people to find value out of each other is to be intentionally extractive and ask directly.
There are so many things wrong with that setup you described. I would want to run out of that room. In fact, I might stand up and leave if someone put me in that room. Important for those listening that we walk through what we recognize makes it toxic. The first one is you recognize there was an extractive intention. And when we assume that people have extractive intentions and transactional orientations, we've already toxified what could be. Second one is facilitation can be great, but we need to facilitate understanding how people connect. And people connect, according to the research, when we understand that other people understand us intellectually and emotionally. So I can't just know technically that Zvi is a dad. I need to understand emotionally what it is to be a dad in a world of unbridled porn. People have access to our kids digitally that they've never had before. And where the mental health of growing teenagers is a catastrophe, and Zvi's got to battle all this as a parent, and no other parents dealt with this in any generation before. And if I don't understand it emotionally, then like I just intellectually know he's a parent. Well, when you give people 2 minutes for anything, there is no opportunity to get to a place where we recognize that others understand us emotionally and intellectually. All we have is a data dump, and a data dump doesn't create connection. So they have immediately structured this to make sure that you're not going to get a conversation of richness or depth that's going to make you feel more connected. Am I wrong about that, Zvi?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a very big difference between sharing information and getting someone to share a story, right? I don't need to know your whole lifeline. Tell me more about why you chose the career you did, right? That will tell me a million more things than just, all the details about like where you moved from or where you're born.
Yeah, my entrance into that conversation is to reference an emotion because why is an intellectual question. It's not a wrong one or a bad one, it is intellectual. So if I were to ask about someone's career, which I almost never do for reasons we can talk about, I'll say, I'm curious what inspired you to launch companies. Or I'm curious what inspired you to coach other founders. And it sounds like an almost invisible change, but it taps a different part of our experience because it forces us to then mine our experience, go find that emotion, and then bring that emotion into the conversation, as opposed to construct an argument, if you will, or a coherent narrative to explain the outcome.
Absolutely. Right. And allows them to be seen, right? Maybe they're an accountant because they actually didn't want to be an accountant because their
Mm-hmm.
family forced them or something like that, or
Right.
because they need a job and it's actually not something exciting. It's not part of their identity. But maybe again, there's a story about what brought them there in some way.
Maybe it's a
What
good time to bring up here. My almost always rule is to never ask people about their work. And that's not to say that people who do that are terrible or it's never an appropriate thing to figure out, if this event is for book authors, have you written a book? But the reason is many people don't want to talk about their work. And I was that way for years. When I was a filmmaker, I was a PBS filmmaker making a film about genocide survivors. For at least 7 years, I couldn't go to any social event where when people found out I was a documentary filmmaker making a film about genocide something, where then genocide was the topic for no less than an hour, if not the entire evening. And I desperately wanted to go to an event where we didn't talk about genocide. Desperately. And I couldn't find that event unless we lied about what we did. And if someone's job is to clean hotel rooms, they probably don't want to talk about cleaning hotel rooms and be judged by people who think they're fancy because they make films. Whereas they could be thrilled to talk about their triathlete training, which I'm not going to get to if I default to work.
And the other part is that it oftentimes brings, and I wouldn't necessarily say I avoid work entirely, or, but it's usually like that's a later conversation. But it also introduced power dynamics.
Yep,
So
that's right.
part of the reason, for example, why when I'm inviting people for dinner on the calendar invite, I actually don't expose the list of other attendees, because the struggling startup founder, might be sitting next to the guy who sold his company for 300 million, might be sitting next to the person who graduated 5 years ago and is trying to make a career switch. And if you put those three people together, they can have amazing conversation about all of them being triathletes. Or I had one conversation where the topic switched to taking care of aging parents. That was really fascinating. But obviously, if you that can get broken, destroyed if one person is perceived as more important or more
Yeah.
successful or more valued by society than another one. So that's also why I find, the career stuff and work stuff, yeah, that's part of someone's identity,
Yeah.
but that's not the most important thing in someone's identity per se.
Yeah. And this is going to sound like a snobby conversation. When friends who have very prestigious roles are around, I notice they want to have conversations where the projections onto them because they have that role don't pollute the conversation.